All right. Hello, I'm Cedric. I'm a PhD student in Computing Information Sciences at the Rochester Institute of Technology. And today I'm going to talk about interactive machine learning and why human factors, especially cognitive load, matter when we give users direct control over learning systems. So interactive machine learning is a subfield of machine learning that interacts with human-computer interaction. In IML systems, an agent stays in the loop, interacting with the model as it learns. The model adapts from agent feedback while the agent gets feedback from the model. So IML systems are important because they enable personalization, data efficiency, and user agency. So in IML systems, when the agent is a human, human factors have to be considered to improve the overall efficiency of the IML system, not just the algorithmic factors. So systems that consider human factors are more likely to meet user needs and preferences, leading to higher satisfaction and greater adoption rates. So a few human factors to consider are fatigue, expertise, and cognitive load. So fatigue refers to the physical or cognitive weariness that occurs after prolonged engagement with a task. In IML systems, fatigue can lead to decreased accuracy, and that leads to worse outcomes for the machine learning model in the backend. So the level of user expertise also has to be considered. So experts might need more control over complex functions of the backend, where novices might benefit from a more guided approach. And cognitive load refers to the amount of mental effort being used in the working memory. So in the context of HCI and IML systems, cognitive load involves mental effort, and more cognitive load can lead to decreased annotation accuracy. So that's why we're studying cognitive load in my study. So high cognitive load can overwhelm users, leading to errors, reduced efficiency, and worse ML outcomes. So effective management of cognitive load is essential for ensuring that interaction with the IML system is pleasant and not frustrating for the user. So there's also a trade-off with giving agency to humans. So controllability gives more agency to the human in the IML system, but there's a trade-off with cognitive load there. So in this study, I have a few research questions. What is the effect of varying controllability on the system? What is the effect of varying controllability of the system on cognitive load? What TLX subskills are most affected? Does controllability increase task completion time? Does controllability influence tonic arousal? Does controllability influence phasic arousal? So I'm going to move on to my experimental setup. So in order to answer those research questions, I made an IML system. So the IML system consists of a front end and a back end. So the front end is an NER task. NER stands for named entity recognition. It's a process in natural language processing where the task is to identify the named entities and classify them into predefined categories. So it was chosen because it's highly configurable based on the tag sets that you select. So an example would be to categorize the word Washington. Washington could be a person like George Washington, or it could be a location like Washington, D.C. In this instance, the backend of the IML system is an LSTM model. So we chose an LSTM model, a pretty lightweight one, because we wanted the annotators to see their changes reflected in the model during the annotation session. So the overall IML system follows this diagram. A user would be given a piece of text. They would label and correct the model's predictions. That would be sent to the model. The model would update its parameters from those corrections, and then the model would predict the next piece of text given to the user, and the cycle continues. So this is what the front end of my IML system looks like. So you can see that users are given a piece of text. They have to find the named entities and then place them into categories, in this case, person, organization, and location. So I made the system with Label Studio, an open source labeling software, PyTorch for the LSTM model, and then I use Flask for the controllability aspect. So the controllability aspect of this experiment was implemented as a browser extension. You can see that the controllability condition of this experiment is the same as the non-controllability. They're given a piece of text and they also have to do the NER task. But in this case, they have to interact with the browser extension, which gives them control over some of the LSTM's hyperparameters. And they had to do this for every piece of text that they annotated. So the overall flow of our experiment is shown in this diagram. So participants would come in, we'd give them a demographic form. We'd have them watch a demo video to understand how to do the NER task. Then we'd put on the sensors and calibrate those sensors. So we had a counterbalance design, so they could either start with the controllability aspect or without it. So in the controllability condition, they would perform 20 NER tasks, and then afterwards they'd perform the NASA TLX survey. So after they were done with the controllability portion, they'd move on to the non-controllability portion. So they'd perform another 20 NER tasks and then be given the NASA TLX survey again. And then afterwards, we'd give them a feedback form. So we're also in the process of collecting data for a pair-based condition where participants are doing the same thing, also a counterbalance design, but in a pair. So preliminary analysis of the pair data shows that there is no increase in cognitive load and task completion time, but we're still collecting that data. So this is what a participant would look like when they come into our lab. So you can see that there's a GSR sensor on their non-dominant hand, and they're also wearing eye trackers. So we try to keep as many of the environmental factors the same in between participants as possible. So more information about the specific sensors we used. So we used a galvanic skin response sensor, specifically the Shimmer 3. So galvanic skin response, or GSR, measures the electrical conductance in the skin, which varies with the moisture level. So GSR is sensitive to emotional arousal, and that's indirectly related to cognitive load. So we can indirectly relate cognitive load to GSR. And higher cognitive load is increased skin conductance. So you can see in this graph on the bottom right here, that's just the skin conductance over time for one of the participants during their annotation period. So we also had the participants wearing eye trackers, specifically the Pupil Labs core. So eye trackers capture where and how people look. So there's a lot of great information you can give them eye trackers. We were specifically focused on pupil dilation. So the dilation of pupils is controlled by the autonomic nervous system, and it can reflect changes in cognitive effort. So larger pupil dilation can indicate a more demanding task. And this graph at the bottom right shows binocular pupil dilation for a participant during the annotation session. So there are a lot of environmental factors that can also control or affect pupil dilation, such as participants' circadian rhythm or caffeine or medication intake. We also had the NASA TLX survey as a subjective workload measure. That NASA TLX, or task load index survey, consists of 6 dimensions: mental demand, physical demand, temporal demand, performance, effort, and frustration. So a higher score on the NASA TLX survey indicates a higher cognitive load. So I'm going to move on to some preliminary results. So as expected, cognitive load does increase with controllability. Overall, the NASA TLX increased by about 7 points on average with controllability. So adding controls does meaningfully increase the perceived workload that participants did face, and that's a consistent and a significant effect with a medium effect size. So you can see the spaghetti plot on the right here shows each of the individual participants. Most of them do find increased cognitive load with the controllability than without it. Some of them find less cognitive load, but the vast majority find more cognitive load. We also decided to look at the specific subscales of the TLX survey. So mental demand had the clear subscale effect. Effort and frustration also increased significantly, but with smaller effect sizes. So it seems that controllability drives decision and effort friction, but not necessarily how rushed a participant would feel. We also found that annotation time increases with controllability. So tasks took longer, an average of 6.7 minutes longer with controllability than without it. And so this effect was very significant. And you could see that on the spaghetti plot on the right here, you see the vast majority of the participants are taking a lot longer with control than without it. So users spend substantially more time balancing annotations with parameter decisions than without it. So we also looked at the pupil dilation. So mean pupil dilation and pupil variability showed no significant differences. So although participants did feel a higher workload and it did take them longer to complete the tasks, it did not manifest as tonic or phasic pupil arousal here. So that could happen because the main cost is decision overhead instead of sustained arousal. Notably, though, we did look at the GSR, mean GSR and standard deviation. So mean GSR did not significantly change, but GSR variability did change with controllability. So the standard deviation of the GSR was significant. And so controllability doesn't seem to raise the baseline arousal of participants during their annotation period, but it did raise the variability. So that is like more phasic bursts tied to extra decisions, which aligns with the TLX increase in mental demand, effort, and frustration. So summary, controllability in IML systems adds agency, but it costs cognition. So for the NASA TLX survey, mental demand had the clearest increase, effort and frustration also increased, but less so. Mean GSR was unchanged, but GSR variability increased, so that's more phasic arousal. Design takeaways, we want to design for cognitive sustainability and consider gating advanced controls by human expertise. And we're also in the process of collecting additional data with pair collaboration, and the preliminary results there are quite promising. It seems that doing this task in pairs does not significantly increase the annotation time or the perceived cognitive load. So these are my references. I'd like to thank my advisor, Dr. Cecilia Alm, my colleague, Parth Kapoor, and the rest of my lab.